Good morning, everyone. Looks like pretty much everyone has joined the call, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay. I want to welcome you all to the second learning session on developmental monitoring and promotion. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping items for attendance. We want to make sure that everybody is here who's supposed to be here, and we also want to make sure later for breakout rooms, we know who's supposed to go into what room. So if you could please enter your first and last name into the chat. If your name appears differently on the participant list, if you're calling in or something, please enter that as well so we can track you, and what your program name is. All right, please remember to mute yourself when you're not presenting. It's a little noisy otherwise. You're welcome to show or hide your face. Most people like to hide their face unless they're presenting, but you're welcome to go on camera so that it's not just me looking at myself. If you do need to rename yourself, there are instructions here for how to do that. Also, we know this is a long day. We do have some scheduled breaks and we'll take a break for lunch, but if at any time you need to move around, stretch, tend to kids or animals, please just let us know so I don't accidentally call on you. You can select participants and go to more, and then you can actually indicate that you need a break or you're away. If at any point during this meeting you need immediate assistance, you can call or email Lisa, and she will help you with anything you need, especially if you're having challenges with breakout rooms or if you need help with a presentation, she'll help you with that. Here's our agenda for today. For the most part, I think we'll pretty much stick to the times. This group is a little bit larger than the one that met last Thursday, so the times may change a little bit, but we're going to start with a welcome. We're going to talk through some of the core measures that we collect at a learning collaborative level, so across all the programs, and I'll show you some results of what we're seeing so far. Then we'll have final presentations. We'll have all of you, except for the C1 programs, present on how your first round of PDSA for developmental monitoring went. We'll take a break after that for lunch. And then when we return, we'll start thinking through what we want to do for the next round of developmental monitoring and promotion. So I'll review the key drivers diagram. We'll go over the Learning Collaborative SMART aim, some tips and strategies for PDSAs. Then we'll spend most of the afternoon in breakout rooms. Those will be organized by program. So you'll go in with your programs and you'll plan what you want to do for this next round of PDSA. We'll take a quick break after that, and when we come back, we'll finish up with sharing your plan for this next round. Before we get started, I want to welcome back the C1 programs. We had Tulsa C1 last week, and this week we have OKC C1, and we are thrilled to have them rejoining. They have been out of CQI for about 2 years now, given all the demands they had due to COVID, and we are thrilled that they are back. They obviously won't be presenting in the morning session since they didn't do a PDSA last round, but they will be planning and engaging in PDSA for the next round. So we're really excited to have them. All right, so we're going to look at some Learning Collaborative wide outcomes that we've been tracking over the last 5 to 6 months. We had 2 different SMART aims for this round in this Learning Collaborative. The first is focused on developmental monitoring. So the aim 1 is to have 80% of children with an identified developmental or behavioral concern receive targeted developmental promotion and support in a timely manner, including an appropriate combination of home visitor delivered developmental promotion and community services by December 2022. I know that's a lot of jargon. In a nutshell, what that means is what we would like to do is we are going to identify of all the children who've received the ASQ or the ASQS, anybody who's been identified as having a developmental concern or behavioral concern, we want to track to see, are they receiving the appropriate referrals? Are they being referred to community agencies that can help support them? So we're tracking that. In addition, we are also looking at, for our SMART Aim 2, to improve parental promotion of development. So we have that Learn the Signs, Act Early measure that your programs have been completing every 3 months. And that's tracking to see how often are parents engaging in certain positive parenting practices. For example, how often are they reading to their kids, eating meals together? And we would like to see that score on average across all programs increase by 20% by December of this year. Across the Learning Collaborative, so in addition to receiving your PDSA specific dashboards every week, you should also be receiving the Learning Collaborative Core Measures dashboard. And here what we do is we track a few different outcomes. In the green, what you'll see are outcomes related to family engagement. These are measures that we've tracked pretty much since the beginning of the Learning Collaborative. So even when we are focused on father engagement or developmental monitoring and promotion, we still have these core measures that we're tracking. We want to see the percent of families that are receiving their expected home visits each month, the total capacity served by each program, and the percent of families who are still participating in home visiting 3 and 6 months after they enroll. So I'll show you some data on those outcomes today. In addition to those in green that are focused on family engagement, we also have a number of new core measures that we are tracking specifically because of the focus on developmental monitoring and promotion. So those are in orange, and we're focusing on the percent of children with identified concern receiving support. So that's that first SMART aim that I just described. We're also tracking the percent of home visiting workforce that are receiving child development related trainings. And finally, we're tracking that SMART Aim 2, so the Learn the Signs, Act Early measure, and we're looking at 3 and 6 months out. How do those scores change over time? Okay, so I'm going to turn to the family engagement measures. And feel free at any point, I know this is a lot of information, if at any point you have any questions, you're welcome to write in on the chat, or feel free to just interrupt me with questions, totally fine. Okay, so this first core measure is looking at the percent of reached visit goals. And this is first for PAT programs. Today I'll be showing you data from PAT and Safe Care. We haven't been tracking C1 right now just because since they have been kind of on a home visiting hiatus for the last 2 years, we haven't been tracking their data. But for PAT, what we see is basically, if we have a certain number of visits that we're hoping to do each month, how close are they to reaching that percent goal? And what we see is that on average, they've been hovering pretty close to that 50% line, although it's been ticking up in the last couple of years. And so now they're up to probably about 60% of their visits that they want to complete are happening. In Safe Care, I know the graph's a little skewed because early on we weren't tracking this way. Safe Care, we see about the same thing, although a slightly different pattern more recently where those visits have dropped, the percent of reached goals has dropped a little bit over the past couple of years, potentially due to the pandemic. This is visit completion rate. So basically, if there's a scheduled visit, how often is that visit being completed and actually happening? And what you can see for PAT is it's a pretty consistent trend line. About 75% of the time, if a visit is scheduled, it takes place. Seeing about the same thing for Safe Care, a little bit of change in trend, but if you look at kind of the overall numbers, we're still seeing somewhere in the neighborhood of 70–75% of those visits are being completed each month. These graphs show retention rate. So it's showing at 1 month, 3 months, and 6 months. What that means is if a family enrolls in home visiting, are they still enrolled 1 month later, 3 months later, and 6 months later. And what we see for PAT is that about 80% of families are still enrolled at 1 month, about a little under 75% are still enrolled at 3 months, and then it goes to roughly 60–65% by 6 months. So a relatively high rate of retention over a 6-month period. Safe care, we see by 1 month, really high retention rate. So about maybe 85–90% are still enrolled at 1 month. And then at 3 months, we're seeing more like a little under 75%. By 6 months, it has dropped down and is getting closer to that 50% mark. So a little drop off in retention by the time we get 6 months out for safe care. Okay. Now I'm going to turn to core measures on developmental monitoring and promotion. I'm going to start first by presenting some data related to the percent of children with an identified concern receiving support. So basically what we did here is we look at 4 ASQ scores, all the children that have completed an ASQ. Are they marked as having some level of concern on any domain that is measured in the ASQ? And then we look to see, of those children where there's an identified concern, what percentage of those kids are receiving a referral? This is for PAT programs. What we see here, this pink line to start with, is showing of those children who are identified with a potential concern. And in this graph, we see at the top, it says that N equals 696. So that means we have 696 children across all PAT programs where there is a potential area of concern. Of those children, 67% of them are being referred to some sort of intervention or community service. We see that of those children, 20% of those kids are actually utilizing the referral, so they are then enrolled in that community program. So again, out of 696 kids, 67% of them are receiving the appropriate referral and they are utilizing services. This is for safe care programs, and we're seeing a similar trend. 76% of the kids are receiving a referral to community services if they've been identified with a developmental potential concern, and about 8% of those kids are actually utilizing the referral. We're also interested in tracking the percent of home visiting workforce that receive child development related trainings. We're still working on determining the best way to pull this data out of ETO. And we're working with John and Anir at OSDH to see what we can do for ETO. It looks like they're in the process of creating more of a system where we're tracking these trainings. So that'll be something that we probably dive into more at the next learning session, which will happen this summer. We also have a SMART aim related to that LTSAE measure, and so I'll show you what that data looks like. As a reminder, the core measure that we're tracking is developmental promotion, and we ask how often or how many days during the last week the parent engages in each of these behaviors with their children. There are 15 different items that we ask them about, and we look to see on average how often are they doing each of these behaviors across a 7-day period. Parents indicate that they never do these things. They do them 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 or more days, or every day. This graph is showing the average score over time. So for PAT programs, when we look at that first measurement, so we average all 15 of those behaviors across all programs, we're seeing that parents say they do these behaviors on average about 3.56 times a week. So about 3.5 days a week on average, they're engaging in those positive parenting behaviors. Oops, went the wrong direction. When we ask them a second time, that score has gone up a little bit. So on average, they're now completing those behaviors about 3.7 times a week. So improvement. And for some families, by the time we ask a third time, they're up to 3.9. So almost 4 days a week, they're completing these positive parenting practices. Our SMART aim is if we increase by 20% from where they started. So they started at 3.5. To increase by 20%, we're going to try to get them up to a little over 4 days a week. So we're trending in the right direction. We're getting those scores up over time, but we still haven't quite reached our SMART aim. We see the same thing for safe care. So if we look at that first measurement in pink, it's about 3 days a week. Second measurement, it's gone up to 3.4. By the third measurement, it actually exceeds the SMART aim of 4 by being about 4.16 times a week. Now, I will point out with each subsequent measurement, so from the first to the second to the third, it's a smaller group of families. What we're going to try to do is continue collecting this data over the next 5 to 6 months so that we hopefully can get all of the families to have completed a second and third measurement so we can really see if that trend holds over time. Are they improving across time for all programs and all parents? This is a density map. It basically is just showing us where the total scores lie. So on average, the scores are pretty high. You can see the peak is kind of over to the right. That essentially just means most families are indicating pretty high scores so that they're engaging in these positive parenting behaviors on a pretty regular basis. Here we've broken it down by all 15 items. And so what you can see here is essentially if you look at the purple, so the purple color indicates never. So these are when parents say, I never do this with my kids. And there are some items, some positive parenting behaviors where never is a more common response. Some of this is probably age-based. You can see that the one that they say never to the most is encourage simple chores. For kids who are at a certain age, if you have infants and even young toddlers, you're probably not going to be encouraging simple chores, and therefore it might make sense that that response is never. However, there are still plenty that of these responses that have never to be relatively common. We see for play dates, for example, about 25% are saying they never do this for their kids. Over 25% are saying they never go to the park or on a hike. We also see others where it's a really high level of that kind of salmon pink color, and that's indicating that this is happening every day. So when you look at something like show affection towards the bottom of this graph, you see that almost every parent is saying that they show affection every single day. Something to think about as you're planning your PDSAs for the next round is maybe you want to focus in on some of the positive parenting behaviors and kind of leave others. For example, if you know that pretty much all parents are showing affection, it looks like a lot of parents are allowing or providing toys and playing games with their child, maybe you don't focus on those positive parenting behaviors, but maybe you do focus on encouraging them to go to the park or go on hikes or arts and crafts or getting their kids to go and interact with other children. Especially during the pandemic, some of these have probably taken a bit of a hit and aren't happening as frequently. And so trying to focus in on certain positive behaviors rather than addressing all of them at the same time. That is one option that you could think about for next round. In addition to the data that we're getting at the learning collaborative level, for our external evaluation, our research team at OU Health Sciences Center has also been interviewing moms involved in home visiting, as well as moms who aren't involved in home visiting. So these are WIC moms, they're enrolled in WIC benefits, but they do not participate in home visiting. So you can see the two groups at the bottom, we have WIC and home visiting. And we looked at their scores, so across 252 mothers that we interviewed, what we see is that moms engaged in home visiting indicate that they do positive parenting practices. They complete these activities with their kids more frequently than mothers who are enrolled in WIC but are not receiving home visiting services. This is a slightly different type of graph, but we basically did the same thing comparing home visiting moms to WIC moms, also about milestone knowledge. So this is the other Learn the Signs accurately measured that some of you have seen before, where we ask, at what age is it a problem if your child hasn't reached a certain milestone? And we track to see how well did parents know these milestones. Here, when we compare the two groups, we're not seeing a difference. So these two lines, the teal and the kind of reddish salmon color, they're right on top of each other. So the parents don't seem to differ in their milestone knowledge, even though they do differ in the level to which they engage in positive parenting activities. Okay, I want to open it up. What questions do people have? Any feedback on the information that's been provided so far? Nothing?
Helen, this is Dawn. I do have a question. With the statistics and the data, were we able to utilize North Care Safe Care in that? Because I know we do not enter in TTO yet. And in the past, we haven't been part of it, just for clarification.
That's a great question. Andrew is working with Stephen Fowler to pull these data for North Care as well, so that we can add them. It's been a little bit tricky, and he hasn't, I think, been able to do that yet. Andrew, are you on? Have you been able to touch base with Stephen about that?
I am on. I have gotten heard back from Stephen Fowler. There is some data in ETO regarding this. I'm afraid I haven't pulled into the PDSA yet.
Okay.
There's information about the ASQ data, but attaching that to who's been referred to an outside service, that's been a bit of a challenge. So I'm still working on that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and it looks like Lisa answered Rachel's question in the chat, but she was asking about how do you measure milestone knowledge. We have 32 questions where we ask parents, if your child is not performing a milestone, is it a problem, and at what age? So basically we say, at what age is it a problem if your child's not stringing multiple words together, is not able to climb stairs independently, is not able to use a cup, and the parents indicate, well, I think it's a problem if this isn't happening by the time they're 6 months or a year or something to that effect. And so then we can mark, is this accurate? Do they understand the milestones, or is it inaccurate? So for that, it's really the level of knowledge that the parents have about when certain milestones should occur. And what we find, and this is perhaps not surprising, parents aren't particularly good at this. We don't see such high scores for milestone knowledge as we do for positive parenting practices. In general, parents struggle a little bit to know when milestones should hit. And it's even more true as the milestones become more abstract. So if you think about early in child development, so the first year, there's some very key milestones that parents know really well. They know, for example, around when children should crawl, when they should walk, when they should say their first words. Once you get past that first year and they've hit a lot of the major gross motor skills and communication milestones, it gets a little bit harder for parents to know when their children should be doing certain things. And so that's something we're looking at, is as we start to collect more of these data and we have a larger sample, we'd like to look at age differences and to see, one, are the positive parenting practices differing across ages? So are they engaging in certain behaviors more than others when their children are certain ages? And also, does their developmental knowledge or their milestone knowledge, does that change over time and with the age of the child? So we'll hopefully be able to unpack some of that a little bit more in the future. Hopefully by the time we do this last learning session in July, we can start to look at some of these age-related trends. Any other questions? Okay, one thing I want to go back to really quickly. I'm going to go back here to the referrals that we're tracking. In our last learning session, so on Thursday when we met with some of the other programs, we tried to talk through this data a little bit more because this is a first pass. And I think some of the programs were taken aback a little bit and they felt like the numbers might not quite reflect what's actually happening. So I know we got some feedback from both PAT and Safe Care programs saying, really, I mean, only 67% of kids who are identified with a concern are actually being referred. So Andrew, if you wouldn't mind just quickly talking through for the group how you pulled these data. And I know we had a discussion on Thursday about some changes that we can make, but I just want to give this group a chance as well to give some information about how they think we should tap into these data.
Absolutely. So there are essentially two streams of data here. There are two touch points I'm pulling from to create this graph. There's the ASQ. Also, am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. So there's the ASQ touch point, which is the ages and stages questionnaire. That's where we identify children who are at risk on one of 6 different subscales: gross motor, fine motor, problem solving. There are a couple of others. So that's how we identify those children, whether or not a child is at risk, if they're below some cutoff on any of those. If there's also an item on that touch point that asks, okay, was a referral to an outside service made for this child? So there's one touch point where we can get both, was a referral made and is the child at risk? There's a separate touch point, the referral out tracking touch point, where we track referrals to various outside services. And for any family where a child was identified as at risk, I tried to merge that data with the referral out tracking data. And that second touch point, that referral out tracking touch point, tells us whether or not, what type of service it was, and do they actually receive the service? Are they currently receiving it? Have they already received it? And I had to make a couple of assumptions putting this graph together. For one, that referral tracking tracks services, all dozens of services we offer to both parents and kids. So I narrowed it down to just those that seemed relevant, just the referrals made that were directed at the children and that seemed relevant to the child's development. So if they're special needs, if they need physical therapy, mental health therapy, vision or hearing screening, things that seemed relevant to the ASQ. And then I also had to do a little bit of guessing about the timing. So I took the date that a ASQ was administered to a family, and I tried merging that with referrals on the referral tracking touchpoint that were made on or after the date of that ASQ screening. And on Thursday, a number of programs came out and said that would probably filter out a lot of families that are receiving help. Oftentimes, if the child is having an issue developing, a referral is already, for services already made. And oftentimes I think that the PEs will recommend a service immediately upon meeting the family rather than waiting entirely for the ASQ to say, yes, this child is receiving services. So that guess about timing might be dropping this proportion of families that are utilizing a service some.
Andrew, this is Dawn. Would that also count those families who were in services when they entered our program? Because I know that does occasionally happen where they may already be connected to Sooner Start services or like speech or something from before they even connected to us?
It would not. Those would not show up in this graph.
Okay, at all. They wouldn't be there at all then.
If they, so that they wouldn't show up as utilizing a service.
But they would
They,
show up.
they would still, they
needing.
would show up in the denominator if they have a child that is at risk.
Yeah, because I would think we would also want to count those because that does happen. And obviously, if they're already in a service, the staff wouldn't be referring them again.
That's a great point, Dwan. And that's something we talked a little bit about on Thursday because we realized there are a couple of things that we're going to look more deeply into. One being exactly what you identified. So in the case that a family is already receiving services, they probably, in most cases, are not completing the ASQ then, because if it's been identified, a lot of the time the programs won't do the ASQ. So they wouldn't be represented in this graph in any capacity. However, we do have some families, Patty was mentioning this from LCDA, sometimes families will request to have an ASQ completed, even if their child's already in services, or sometimes the program elects to do an ASQ. So those children, if an ASQ is completed, it would show up here, but because they're already in services, they may not need a referral, in which case it would kind of skew the data and make it look like there are more children with potentially a behavioral or developmental concern who aren't receiving a referral, but that's because they're already in services. So we're going to look at a few different options for the data to determine how we can get all those families represented. So anybody who is identified at risk, did an ASQ, but didn't receive a referral because they were already in services, or how many families are just not even completing the ASQ because their child is already in services and the issue's already been identified.
Okay,
So yeah, some of the things.
all right. And Helen, I did not realize that our team does complete an ASQ on all the cases. So moving forward, if they're already in Sooner Start, we do not have to do an ASQ.
Yeah, well, yes, technically, but you and I can talk about that offline.
Okay,
I want to
that
check
sounds
with,
good.
I want to check with Steve Ross before I say, yeah, sure, drop your ASQ screens. So we can check in with that.
Helen, this
yeah,
is Susan, and I just want to say for the Children First folks, you do not have to continue to do ASQs after the child's been admitted to enrolled in Sooner Start. So you can continue to do them while you're working with the family to get the child enrolled or get screened and get enrolled. But once they're enrolled, there's really no need to do ASQs because now they've been handed over to a specialist. And if anybody has questions about that, they can email me or we can talk later too.
Thank you, Susan.
No worries.
And it looks like Julie supports that. She says yay. David, I know you've been able to join the call now. Did you have any other thoughts or comments about the screening and how we're identifying this outcome?
I think you guys have covered most of it. We fully acknowledge that we're not capturing all of the information accurately. So we'd like to improve this over time. So expect us to revisit this on the monthly call in February. And we'll probably have some email exchanges with supervisors between now and then to get some of this clarified.
Any other comments or questions about this graph or any of the other data we've talked through so far this morning for anyone? Okay, what we're going to do now is switch to the individual program presentations. Let's see. So what we're going to do is have the programs that completed a PDSA this last round. So you can see the programs listed here. We'll have them present their findings. And actually, I'll stop sharing because programs are going to pick up. So they'll present on their findings, and I believe, so we've got Frontline first. Amy, will you be presenting today?
Yes, good morning. I will be presenting for us. How is everyone doing?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and share screen so we can all see our great presentation. Loading up now. All right, everybody is ready to go?
That looks great. Thanks, Amy.
Okay, thank you. We are Frontline Family Solutions. We're located in Garvin, McLean, and Comanche counties and Southern Cleveland County. We've been 47 years in operation. CQI experience, we have 6 years with state and 3 years McVie. We use the PAT model. We are in the McVie program. We average 47 clients per month, 56 per year. For this project, we used our key driver to be standardized and reliable process for developmental screening as our guide. Why did we do this intervention? Well, we wanted to help change parents' attitudes on child development. We started August 15th. We ended January 15th, 2022. And our SMART aim was to, by January of 2022, to change 10% of parent attitude positively on developmental monitoring for index children. Here on our SMART aim graph, which we love graphs here, the average of the SMART aim prediction, which we wanted to increase by 10%, was not met. This occurred due to several factors, but one that we identified was we started with 45 families beginning the surveys, the pre-survey, and only completed with 36 finishing. We're going to talk about some of those disruptors in just a few moments. So how did we do this? You might be wondering. Well, this was our plan. To implement this change, we used our supervisor, parent educators, and our program support staff. We targeted the index child of the families that were currently enrolled in the program. We showed parents a Simpling Parenting video and talked about the CDC developmental milestones with them. We collected data through surveys, both pre and post, of each parent, primary caregiver that was enrolled. We used virtual services, in-person services also to collect the data. This was our survey for pre and post. We also used a QR code to give parents access to the Simply Parenting video. Also gave them a paper copy and a link to the CDC app to be able to track their child's milestones. During the first visit, we did the pre-survey, and the second visit, we watched the video and made sure parents were aware of the milestones from the CDC, how to access them, how to use them, answer any questions we could about them. Then parents would monitor the developmental milestones over the 6-month period on their own. Then the PCG completed a milestone checklist prior to each visit, and then parent completed the post survey at the end of the CQI cycle. Our outcome measures, the proportion of the primary caregiver to review or update the milestone checklist before the home visit. Our numerator was the number of families reviewing or updating the index child milestones, and the denominator was the number of families visited. So here we can kind of see the difference, the skewed because of only having 36 families complete the project. Our outcome process, of course, like I said, we gave them the milestone checklist with the instructions on how to use the app tracker at the beginning and watch Simpling Parenting video. We believe some of the families had already received the information regarding the development of their child prior to the CQI projects. Families were answering that they were given material about child development on the pre-survey when the material had not yet been distributed. So that was something we wanted to address in the future, was maybe changing up the way the survey questions were given to the families. Here I do want to highlight not only the process we used for this project, but the disruptors. And if you see in red, those were some that we discovered after beginning the project. Parents were telling us this lack of time to track their child's milestones. not being able to complete the post-survey because we experienced a lot of illness in our families during the December, January home visits, a lot of missed visits, just because families were not feeling well. We couldn't complete them. And this not interest in checking on themselves. Something that we learned about ourselves as parent educators and the home visiting project was parents let us know they weren't really interested in tracking milestones on their own because they felt like we were tracking or their physician was tracking, and it was like one extra thing for them to do when they trusted their home visitor was doing it for them. So that was something that we encountered. So just letting us know that our job is important. Our parents did appreciate what we were doing, but we're still trying to get the parents to take that initiative. So some disruptor measures that we did predict was no access to data to use the CDC app, that the PCG did not know how to use the paper checklist or the app, that the PCG would lose their copy of their paper checklist, they would leave the program, or that the index child was prenatal. The mother wouldn't be able to track milestones prenatally. We did experience, like I said, those other disruptors that were unexpected. So our outcome measure, we had 45 unique families that were involved in this program. 36 completed the post survey. We believe some families had already received the information about their milestones prior to the CQI project, and they weren't interested in completing it during the project. We just identified some of those disruptors I already spoke about. So what did we learn? Well, after the completion of the post survey, the average total of primary caregiver attitude toward the developmental monitoring of the index child was 3.4 on our graph, which indicated that it was neutral feeling. After completing, their attitude only increased by 0.2, which meant we did not meet our prediction of increasing their attitude positively by 10%. So no, it did not meet our prediction. We did learn that there was several disruptions that we did not anticipate. Also, that parents were trusting us to track milestones and discuss with them as needed. So what might we do differently? Incorporate non-index children as well as index children. And the reason we say this is we had some families that were prenatal index with older siblings, and parents were tracking older siblings, but we weren't able to include that data in our surveys. We decided we are going to adapt this a little bit with some little fine tuning. We're going to continue to encourage and give parents milestones to track on their own, in addition to the ones that we do. But we're going to use the PAT developmental milestones instead of the CDC guidelines. We're going to just stick to one tracking guide and use in conjunction with parents and with our program. With using this method, milestones will be reviewed at every visit, and then of course updated in ETO once a month. So any questions, guys? We have something in the chat.
Yeah, Susan mentioned that she thought it was interesting some parents don't think monitoring and assisting with their child's development is part of their role as a parent. She was making that comment, and I have to say I also find that incredibly interesting, especially given that even though the home visitors, you do a great job, you're seeing a snippet of those children's lives, and you would think that parents would say, you'd want them to understand that they are seeing a different side of their children, or they're seeing a more comprehensive side of their children perhaps, and that it's crucial for them if there's something that gets missed, because you know, it might not be the case that a home visitor sees everything or a pediatrician sees everything.
We do agree. This was something that we found unique to our program, perhaps. Maybe we do have really close relationships with our families, and it's a real trusting relationship. Perhaps that's why the family trusted us to be their, I guess, tracking body, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Also, the families that we serve do have a lot of challenges that they're already facing. We had a lot of COVID in our area, a lot of economic hardships, a lot of kids home from school, parents without work. There's a lot going on. To maybe that was one extra thing on their plate that they just figured we're doing it, the physician's doing it. Why would they need to additionally track? But I think that spoke volumes about our program and our home visiting relationship, was that they did trust us to just y'all just take care of that for us, 'cause y'all got it.
Take it off
So
their
that was
plate.
something we found out, but yeah, great points, valid point, Susan.
Yeah, Amy, I just think it's really fascinating. I think maybe you didn't even expect that. So it's something that you guys found through the project that is now something else to think about. Because I hear what you're saying about all the other things that are piling on people right now. And that maybe looking out for child development is probably like, hey, they're going to talk when they're going to talk, they're going to walk when they're going to walk, I can't even worry about that right now. So I don't know if you guys will have more discussion around maybe looking at that in the future, because like I added, how can they advocate for their children? Like, and I'll just give you, because I'm so full of anecdotes. I have twin daughters who were super, super quiet, and they were in kindergarten, and the kindergarten teacher wanted to hold them back because she interpreted their quietness and their shyness as somehow not being, maybe intellectually or emotionally mature enough to go on to first grade. And I mean, that freaked me out, right? So I took them to child psychologists. I had them, like their IQs tested. I mean, like I was so worried.
Right.
No, they were just quiet and shy, and they're 22 now and they're doing great. So I just, I want to empower, I'm sure you do too, parents to be able to, like Helen said, I could recognize that, even though I doubted myself as a parent because this kindergarten teacher was making a hard case that my girls needed to be held back. I don't know, it's just something to think about in the future.
No, absolutely. I myself have a kindergartner right now that has struggled, developmental challenges. And if I wouldn't have the experience education from my professional realm, I would feel the same as just taking what the kindergarten teacher says as what it is. When in fact, as the parent, I do have other experiences. So I understand what you're saying. And I think this was a surprising finding for our agency. But yeah, I wish that there was a way we could get parents more on board and involved in following the milestones.
Well, hopefully some of those things those pieces that are affecting them right now, those stressors, maybe those will start to be relieved somehow with other work that's going on in the community.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Amy.
No problem. Thank you.
I don't want to belabor the point, but yeah, I'm fascinated by this too, Amy. Great job, by the way. I second what Sarah said in the chat. Your PowerPoint was very lovely as well. You may steal that and show it off if you give us permission.
We're a teamwork.
Piggyback on what Helen and Susan said. This might be an interesting topic for the next PDSA. How do we convince parents to take more ownership of the monitoring process? And one thought I have there is, I know this isn't easy to admit perhaps, but as a professional, it's easy to miss these, right? It's easy to overdiagnose and underdiagnose. And so to Helen's point and Susan's point, to have parents involved who are around these kids, 24/7 for the most part, right? And they're at least getting feedback even when they're not home. They're the best possible reporter for these developmental concerns. And so if we don't have their input, we're only seeing it through the eyes of whatever a home visitor sees every other week, whatever a teacher sees when that child's in the classroom. We really need the comprehensive lens to make a quality judgment there. So I don't know what the solution is, but you've identified a very interesting problem. And again, I think this would make a great topic for a future QI project.
This is Susan, I also wonder if it's something to do with their confidence, because if a teacher or a professional says your child needs to be held back or whatever then maybe they don't even question it, like, oh, okay, well, they know better. And that kind of underlines like what you were saying about how they trust you guys. You're the professionals, you're keeping track. That's, to me, that's all kind of related. And so then you think about maybe just how you can instill confidence in a parent in their abilities or understanding to see their own child's development and whether or not they have concerns. Of course, then that goes the other way too, because then you've got parents who aren't concerned and you as a professional are like, oh, holy heck, this kid needs to get into a speech pathologist or whatever, So it's an interesting topic, and I know we need to move on, but.
Just one comment to add to that. As a home visitor, and my role as a home visitor, at my first visit with the family, I make sure they know, I say, you are the expert of your family. I'm just here to support you and help you reach your goals. So I do try to start our relationship by empowering.
I love that, Amy. That's great. Exactly.
And, right. So I kick off our relationship that way. And I think just as we go, that trust builds. So I think that's where our issue came during this project was, we just had a really great rapport with our clients, and they were like, well, you guys just track. Y'all
Well,
track.
one more thing, and then I truly will be quiet, but Helen and David, this reminds me of last week when we had the folks that were reporting that their parents were not doing extra reading or extra interaction with their kids, creative interaction, because they already get that at school, quote unquote. So again, almost like letting other people take care of those things. So then I wonder, like, what does today's modern parent actually think their role is? If they don't have to read and they don't have to be creative and they don't have to worry about the milestones, because other people are just going to worry about all of that. So good topic.
Yeah. Great project, guys.
Thank you so much, Amy. That was wonderful. We are gonna have North Care present next. Juan, are you presenting, or Jade?
I am.
Okay.
One last time, and then I'm gonna let Jade.
One final hurrah before you pass the baton. All right.
Okay, can you see the screen?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay. So we're Safe Care at North Care, and for the MCV funding, we serve Oklahoma County. Now we are definitely growing and serving more counties now. Amy from Frontline, I'm going to be messaging you privately because I would love to touch base. We're moving into your areas. So I was happy to see you on this. But we were the Safe Care program and North Care in Oklahoma County started in 2002. This is our first CQI project for this round, for this focus. We use the Safe Care curriculum, and we have 4 providers currently, 2 MCV funded and 2 non-MCV funded. The numbers per month and per year I had to use from my last report, so I don't know that these are actually accurate right now, but it was 38 per month and 70 per year. So our title was Keeping Up with the Milestones, and our primary driver was to improve development behavioral screening, and we wanted to do this by encouraging development monitoring using the Milestone app. We started August 1st. And then this morning was that parents will complete a total of 10 activities from the app with their children by December 21st. Or I'm so sorry, December of 2021. Our outcome measure was to look at the number of activities from the app that were completed since the last home visit. Our process was to look at the number of visits in a week where the family has downloaded the Milestone app. And then the disruptor was to look at the different obstacles that the families were going to be running into, because we knew that there may be multiple. And so looking at all the different aspects that were causing barriers for families. With the change theory diagram, our first step was to introduce the Milestone app. Then the providers were going to assist the families with developing an account so they could download the app on their phone. One disruptor we identified early on was the use of technology and just not being able to utilize the feature of the app on their phone. We also, the next step was to follow up weekly to see if the family was utilizing the app. Another disruptor was they just not utilizing the materials for whatever reason. And we knew that that could be varying reasons, but just they didn't follow through. Then address concerns and make needed referrals, and then just to continue to educate the families on their child development. The plan was for the providers, the prevention specialists, to implement the plan with all the consumers. So every family that was enrolled tried to implement this with them. Providers would have consumers utilize the Milestone tracking app to continue their monitoring of their child's development, and this occurred in the consumer's home. Like I said earlier, the steps was just to introduce the app, assist families with setting up an account, follow up weekly to inquire if the families did complete the activity, address any concerns that, and make referrals as needed, to continue with encouraging the use of the app between home visits, and to continue with child development education. Some adaptations, some problems identified were that families, forgetting to complete assessments or the assignment between visits. Families did not have the technology or the data plans to utilize the app. And sometimes even parents reported child being unwilling to participate. So I don't know what that meant, if there was illness that maybe interfered or exactly what that meant, but that was what was reported to us. so some of the attempts to address some of these concerns was providers reminded families of the app during the home visits. Providers also made additional suggestions on activities to complete from the app. So something early on that we realized is that families maybe weren't going to the app, but they were still doing things that would address and assess the child's development, like reading to their child. Like that was one of the activities that was on the app. And so providers would like prompt them, well, did you read to your children this week? Did you do this week? And reminding them that these are things from the app that they were doing. So our outcome measure, our goal was 10 activities to be completed by each family. And on average, we ended up with 4.13. So didn't hit our goal, but yeah, we just didn't hit it. I don't know what to say to that. But, and then Andrew, with this graph, I quite cannot make it out. Can you give me some assistance with this one?
Sure. So as mentioned, one of the process measures was getting the PEs to discuss the Milestones app with their family. And this map is just showing within a week what like each one of those points is a specific week. And on the y-axis, you've got the proportion of visits you had where the PE actually discussed the Milestones app with the family.
Okay, thank you. And then with this graph, we're looking at the salmon color line shows how many families were actually enrolled in receiving services and had discussed the app and had that opportunity to download the app. And then the teal line is showing how many families actually were downloading the app onto their phone. And so you can see as the families increased, so did the number of families that were signing on. This graph shows all our different disruptors throughout the process. And so each color has a different thing it represents. And so we'll talk about this a little bit more in a future slide, but some of the ones like we've already talked about is just child being unwilling, forgetting, technology issues. Those were some of the main ones. So like I said, our outcome was that families completed on an average about 4 activities between visits. About 62% of families had downloaded the Milestone app by the end of the project. And then disruptors were, like I said, cell phone, being not able to download the app, child unwilling to participate, either no or unreliable internet to use it, and forgetting. And then we also had a large portion that just other reasons could be child being away, child being sick, different things that just fall into the other category. So lessons learned was that technology is a barrier for some families, especially with limited data plans, and that families forget or don't even realize that they're utilizing information from the app, which in turn can lead to inaccurate reporting because they could be, I mean, they may not be doing the app itself, but they've looked at it once and they're doing these activities and not remembering to report it to us. So we've decided to adapt this. It was difficult for families to follow through with the project due to the reasons we discussed already. So the plan is just to offer this to a family as a resource. With the Safe Care curriculum, there's already opportunities for child development assessment with ASQs. Our PCI module has a lot of child development assessment that goes into that as well. And so just adding this as a resource for families to utilize on their own and encouraging them, especially like when we're no longer in the home, to continue to utilize the app. All right. I'm so sorry, now I don't know how to stop this. Okay, any questions?
Thank you, Dawn. Any questions for Dawn? Dawn, one question that I had, a few of the other programs utilized the app as well. And it's kind of the same feedback I feel like we're getting, which is definitely storage space, compatibility with phone was a challenge. But there was also feedback around just the functionality of the app and how helpful it was or wasn't. Do you have any thoughts? Have you heard anything from the providers or families about just what they thought of the content or how it was delivered? anything about more of the functionality of it?
And I probably will defer this one to Jade because I know she in the team as a whole, because I know they were the ones utilizing the app. I have not heard necessarily. I just know that there was one visit where a family did say that I was on, where the family did say they downloaded it. It just was sucking so much of their data that it was not even helpful at that point. Like, so they deleted it. Team, do you have any other comments or thoughts? Have you received any other feedback?
I haven't regarding like the functionality of the app, but I will say I noticed that, I mean, I had a fewer cases than other providers did, but I noticed the cases that enjoyed it the most or used it the most was like the first time parent, and they were also like a little younger too. So I don't know if that but I didn't have a lot to compare that to, you know what I'm saying? Between other families, because I had just both of my cases really were two first time parents with younger infants. And so it was a little more appealing to them as far as using it and stuff. But as far like the content and the functionality, nobody really said anything. So I don't know if they had any complaints or enjoyed it or what.
There wasn't really any complaints from the clients that I had. Theirs was more of trying to make the time, and then the confusion behind whether their day-to-day activities with their babies was worth recording. And then I had to give them that, what's the word I'm looking for? That confidence that, yeah, that is a part of an activity that is on the list of things. And so we can go ahead and check that off. And, you know, I would help them kind of like navigate through the app. And that was quite a bit of me helping them navigate through and finding those activities to enter it in or to check it off the list. But I would say out of 10 of my clients, 2 were more engaged with it. But out of those 2, one of them, I had to help her navigate through it all. So, because she's a first time mom, and she wants to make sure she's doing everything right and by the book. And with that said, sometimes she discourages herself in thinking that, oh, maybe I'm not engaged with my child enough, or she didn't think that reading a book or even passing a ball would even be considered as an activity at that time. So, you know, it's a learning process for them. So
Thank you, Kelly. And I think just the fact that having to help them navigate kind of answers that question too in my book. It's like, oh, okay, it wasn't as easy for them to navigate it through on their own. So thank you for that feedback.
That's great, thank you. Yes, we have heard that with the app. We've also just heard it with other things with activities where sometimes the parents are thinking so concretely and they overcomplicate what an activity has to be. And so sometimes they sell themselves short in terms of they're doing a lot more with their kid than they realize, but they're not necessarily counting it, like you said, because they're thinking it has to be some structured time that they set aside and they deliberately create this activity for their child, rather than these are just what happen in the moments that you're parenting. So trying to help them be aware of all the positive behaviors that they are doing throughout the course of the day that are great for their kids.
And at the end of the day, we want parents to do that naturally and not have to put a lot of thought into it. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just helping them realize that.
Well, thank you, Dwan, and thank you, North Care, for presenting. I think what we'll do for time is we'll actually take our break now, and then we'll rejoin in a little bit so that we can have the remaining presentations go. So let's take a break until we'll come back at, let's see, what time is it? We'll come back at 10:25. So if everyone wants to take about a 15-minute break, we'll come back at 10:25 and do the remaining presentations. Thank you. Welcome back from the break. We're going to have a couple more presentations before we take a longer break for lunch. The next program to present is Parent Promise. Shauna, are you ready to go?
I think so.
Perfect.
You guys see it?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, so don't mind me that I'm stuffed up and kind of winded, but so we're Parent Promise. We called our project Triple P for Positive Parenting Practices. Oh my gosh. Okay. So a little bit about our agency. We've been around since 1988. We were originally named Exchange Club Center for the Prevention of Child Abuse, and that doesn't really roll off the tongue, so we changed it to Parent Promise in 2001. We are the state chapter of Prevent Child Abuse America, so we're Prevent Child Abuse Oklahoma. We have provided home visiting since we were founded, and we've helped more than 6,000 Oklahoma families. And that's actually closer to more than 8,000. I need to update that. But what's great about our programs is we actually have 3 home visitation models, and we can serve 245 families in Oklahoma County and surrounding areas. 2 of our programs can kind of go into Cleveland and Canadian counties. So with Parents as Teachers, we have 7.5 parent educators. Exchange Parent Aid, we have 2 parent aides, and Healthy Families America, we have 3 family support specialists. And with a recent grant, that will be moved up to 4 family support specialists. We're just not there yet. So Triple P, we wanted to increase family involvement in child development utilizing positive parenting practices. So we want to increase PPP within the families we serve by utilizing our PAT curriculum that both our families and our parent educators are already familiar with. And our goal was to increase the amount of times per week Triple P are utilized within our enrolled families by 15% by the end of December of 2021. Sorry, guys. Okay. So here are our measures. Our outcome measure was entering the following data biweekly into ETO. So we asked our families, how many days a week did you have mealtime activities together? Did you read or tell stories together? Did you go out and do outdoor activities together, or did you just play with your child? The process measure was asking if the family has a specific set of practices they want to focus on. And then did the parent educator provide these materials related to any of the following Triple P? I'm sorry, I worded that weird. So again, family mealtime, that shouldn't say ready, reading or story time activities, outdoor playtime, or no particular focus. And on the no particular focus, that's kind of if the parents really didn't care. And then the PEs would kind of look at what they think that those families needed to focus on. Okay. Our disruptor measures included conflicting family schedules, family conflicts. So that could be mom and dad not getting along, you know, all kinds of drama, mental health in regards to the parents, illness, unwillingness to change on the parent's part, unwillingness to participate on the child's part, or other. Here is our change theory diagram. So this just is what I just went through. So our plan was that our parent educators will work with the enrolled families, and this is all going to take place during home visits, either virtual or in person. The time frame that everyone's using. So our what is that the PEs will use the Triple P handout to ask their families how often they do these practices and which one or ones are most important to them for change. Once the parent educators have an idea of what the family wants or needs, they'll plan their visits accordingly. The parent educators will then bring handouts, books, activities to these families. We normally do porch drop-offs during this time that focus on the areas that need improvement. Parent educators will then document in ETO what areas they're going to focus on bi-weekly, as well as what they left for the family to utilize. So our due, PEs will give the Learning Collaborative survey to all enrolled clients first as a baseline. And then at the following home visit, PEs will use the Child Development PDSA to plan and encourage triple P with each enrolled family. The Child Development PDSA were the questions that I mentioned on the measurement tool. The Learning Collaborative survey will be completed every 90 days, and the Child Development PDSA will be completed at every home visit. When the PEs ask the clients how often they do triple P, they will then ask if there's a specific area they'd like to improve in. If the client is indifferent, the PE will utilize the responses from the survey and plan the next visit to focus on an area that they feel could be improved on. Some of our observations while doing this, we did have some confusion in the beginning regarding activities and the age of the children. So we just had to kind of think out of the box. I think a lot of us in this field, it's hard to see those gray areas. So for example, we talked about like mealtime activities, and it was brought up that we serve a lot of newborns. And so it was hard to say, like, why would these parents want to improve mealtime? So once we kind of had a discussion about mealtime is going to look different for each age of children. So mealtime for a newborn could be breastfeeding, bottle feeding. What does that look like for that family? Do they do it while they eat dinner? Do they do it before? And once we kind of ironed out those, I feel like we got better data and not as many others being chose and 0 times a week. We also thought we had a very large sample of baseline, which made it kind of difficult to reach that number again. So we didn't reach our goal, but I think I have that somewhere. And this is where I'm going to need some help, Andrew, because, you know, numbers and me. I do know that we didn't reach the 15% increase, but I feel like our families, if all this data is correct, that they're averaging 4 days a week, which is really good. And to be honest, I don't think we could really ask for a whole lot more. It'd be nice every day, but you know what I mean. So it was kind of hard to reach that 15% increase. But for the most part, we stayed pretty, I can't think right now, pretty even.
Consistent.
Thank you, consistent. Words are hard. Here's just more of a breakdown of our outcome measure with what our families were doing per week and each activity. I think we kind of expected outdoor activities to go down. We had a big jump in story time and playtime and mealtime towards the end. Here is our process measure. So the materials related to the family's preferred activities. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't really know how to explain this either, Andrew.
All right, let me jump in then. Yeah, so in addition to tracking whether or not bees brought materials to a given family, we also tracked, okay, did they bring material related to that family's preferred activity, and which activity was that? So how often were the PEs bringing materials that the family explicitly said, this is something we want to improve. And we were just tracking that proportion across time. So each dot along each of these lines is a week. Within that week, we got the proportion of families who asked for materials related to outdoor activities or playtime activities, and actually received some materials from the PE related to one of those activities. Looks like one of the most common ones were playtime activities, just some things to do with your kid. After that, looks like reading and storytime activities, so presumably asking for book recommendations, stories, sources of books, and then asking about outdoor activities. Scott, this is just tracking whether or not how well you follow that process measure, and how well did you follow it with each individual activity. And for most of these, the proportions are pretty high. If someone asks for activities about playtime activities, reading or story time, you're pretty consistently providing those. And there are a couple of zeros where it looks like people just weren't asking for a given activity. Several said they had no particular focus. So yeah, I think you were keeping up with your process measure fairly well.
Awesome. Thank you. And then our disruptors. Again, in the beginning, there was a lot of other being chosen, but then when we really kind of discussed what it means for a child to be unwilling or the PCG to be unwilling, I think we got a little more, we were able to put disruptors in the actual categories. So it's kind of all over the place. I think it all depends on the time of year and what's going on. So there's that. So our lessons learned, although we didn't see the 15% increase we wanted to, we were happy to see that our families consistently averaged 4 days of triple P per week. I also think that we could have better outcomes if we narrowed down what we focused on. But I still feel it was a success because the surveys made the families more aware of the time they did spend with their children. And then we'll continue to work with families to increase family involvement in child development. It's what we do. So we'll definitely continue with the positive parenting practices. And there's that. Any questions?
Any thoughts, comments from the group about Shauna's presentation?
This is David. You can't see me any longer. It's that time of day, but I was impressed with the numbers I saw, Shauna. I mean, it looked like, although the rates didn't increase as much as you would like, it might just be one or two of those categories that's kind of dragging the number down. Outdoor activities in particular, it looked like dropped off quite a bit in the last month, a couple of months. I think if you took outdoor activities out of the equation, you might have actually seen a rise in those other activities that you monitored. And I don't know, Andrew, did you happen to look at it individually by activities, or just the total score?
So that graph line that you're referencing, that's where we looked at the individual activities. The headline where we're looking, do we see that 15% increase? That I've only looked at as a group, but I think you're right. I think the inclusion of those outdoor activities and the fact that we are in a once in a century pandemic really worked against you here and brought that average down. I think with that, if not for either of those, I think you would have reached the goal. It's also worth noting you started with a high baseline to begin with. That the average for everyone's first PDSA was, I think, 4.8. So almost 5 days a week, people are reporting doing these activities at their baseline measurement. It would have been really challenging to improve from there.
Yeah, I would agree. We've often calculated a PPP score that uses 4 days a week as a benchmark. And if they're doing it at least 4 days a week, we give them credit essentially. So, you know, your group was already ahead of the curve essentially on a lot of these activities. But still, it's important to collect this data and see, you know, how far can we push the boundaries here? So I mentioned it last week to another group. I can't even remember who it was now. That, you know, it's always hard to come to the end of one of these, not have met your desired benchmark and feel like this was a failure. But I think in this case, you know, the glass is more than half full. And again, we've learned a lot about how active your parents are in these activities. And I do think if you look at those individual activities, it looks like you may have made a difference. It's just 1 or 2 of them that might have dragged that total score down.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And thanks to my team. They're amazing.
Thanks, Shauna. I was just looking at the positive parenting handout that we distributed the start of this PDSA. I'm looking at the going out and some of the suggestions that they have, and I realized that even though I think I do a pretty good job as a parent hitting most of these positive parenting, going outside definitely took a hit. And I think part of it is, if you look at it, it is pretty specific to kind of isolated time that the parent and the child go outside and do something together. I would say my kids spend plenty of time outside playing on their own, going outside. I don't necessarily always go with them. And as kids get older and they're engaged in more structured recreational activities, they might spend time outside doing those activities, not necessarily going for a walk. So I do think that might be a harder one to move to the same extent as some of these other positive parenting, but all the more reason maybe to focus on it and try to get some improvement for families. But I think you did a great job. I will also say I'm very impressed. Everybody seems to be stepping up their PowerPoint presentation game over the past several learning sessions. They are getting more and more creative and colorful and fun. So wonderful job, Shauna. Appreciate the help. And I appreciate you also struggling through while you're not feeling well.
Thank you.
All right, next group is PCCT-PAT. Sarah, are you going to be presenting that?
I am going to get an assist from Alina,
Okay,
but I will be pulling up the PowerPoint.
that sounds great.
Thank
Maybe.
you, Sarah.
Of course.
Maybe.
What am I doing? Okay. Put my, actually, can you guys see that?
Yes, is there, if you go
Yeah.
to view, you might be able to open it up.
I am so cold.
Yeah, maybe slideshow.
Okay.
Yep, there you go.
Yay. Hi, everyone. I'm Lena Redmond, and I'm a parent educator with the Parent Child Center of Tulsa. The Positive Parenting Program is what our title is. As I said, we're from Tulsa. We've been through a lot of changes. We're currently without a program manager, and Sarah is taking the place of the interim VP over our department, and we're really thankful for that because we also lost our VP as well. So we've been through a lot of changes for the last couple of months. So also bear with me as I try to go through this because, like I said, I'm just a PE. I'm not a data person. Exactly. So anyway, we are Parents as Teachers affiliate. I'm not sure how many years I tried to get that information. Nobody could tell me. So I know I've been here for 6 years, and I think at least 5 of those years we've been the affiliate. And originally we were using Parents as Teachers as well as the Healthy Families America. But we are totally dedicated to Parents as Teachers currently. We have 2 MeTiv parent educators and 3 OCAP funded ones with 2 dedicated Spanish speaking families. We serve families just as everyone else from pregnancy through 5 years old, and served approximately 84 families in 2021. So the key driver for our program was to increase the family involvement in child development, and we wanted to provide parents tools to support their child's development. We started really in September, but there was some questions that we asked in August, kind of a pre sort of questionnaire. The SMART aim was to increase parental knowledge of milestones on average 15% by December using the LTSAE materials. So the outcome measure, the score on the LTSAE milestones to demonstrate 15% increase in milestone knowledge. And we use a survey with 10 of the questions from the 17 measure document using these questions: 2, 3, 6, 8, 14, 16, 23, 27, 29, and 31. All of the parent educators decided to choose. We saw the list of the 17 and we chose 10 out of those. And anyway, I'll just go to the next one. So for the process measure, encouraged parents to use the CDC Milestones app or the website, also paper forms that we provided. The materials included also the parents as teachers information. We had a welcome letter and also the milestone app, paper or the website, and other CDC materials. And the disruptor measure that I thought there was more than one, but apparently we only had the one of the parent or caregiver being illiterate, and we had a yes or no item filled out on the touch point in ETO, asking that, well, we didn't ask the parent that. We were answering that question. I don't know, some of them may have asked the parent. I didn't ask any parent personally. Sorry. Okay, this is a blank because I couldn't get it from anyone.
Yeah, I don't think anyone had it available. I think Marisol had it and we couldn't find it. So
That is okay. These things happen.
we will next round.
Yes, we will next round. Exactly. That's what I was going to say, Sarah. So the plan, the parent educators would implement the change. The target were all the client families. And we wanted to increase parental knowledge of milestones on an average of 15% during home visits, whether in person or virtual. And we provided the welcome letter in September and completed the PDSA survey for baseline information. Actually, some of that was done in August, but mostly in September as well. During the second visit, complete the PDSA again. And from October on, we provided the child development information from parents as teachers and completed the PDSA survey during the second visit. So we created a welcome letter that explained the new project and the benefits. We got the paper materials from the CDC milestones. And also we downloaded the app as the parent educators so that we could demonstrate it to the families if need be. I personally didn't have to demonstrate it to any of my families, but I think that some of my coworkers did that. We made sure that the survey was in ETO and works correctly. I don't know if that's exactly what happened, but and then every 2 months, families who utilize the LTSA milestones checklist would be entered into a drawing to win a children's book basket. One of my families won that, my teen mom. So that was really exciting. It was great to deliver that to her. And so the outcome measure definition for the parental milestone knowledge, the average number of correct items on the 10 developmental milestone questions for each week. The first measurement The average number of correct items on the 10 developmental milestone questions taken from across all clients, first PDSA touch point after the start of the new cycle. And then the last measurement was also the average number of correct items from the developmental questions taken from across all clients' most recent PDSA touch point.
And it might be helpful at this point if Mallory can talk a little bit about some of our results. And I think there might be some information that's not correct. So I don't know if Mallory is here today.
Mallory, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Mallory.
So for the SMART aim, our goal was to increase this developmental milestone average score by 15%. However, we didn't reach this goal. It still stayed basically the same, but something to note is that there's 27 participants who completed the first measurement, but only 13 completed the last. So if there was a few that scored pretty low on the last measurement, then that would significantly impact the total average. So yeah.
And I guess this is kind of demonstrating the average parent milestone knowledge across the weeks that the information was provided. And the materials given, it was the count of materials distributed each week, materials used, total number of families who used that material that we gave them. And like Alina, I think, had said, caregiver, it's a yes or no question, asking if the caregiver sees value in the tracking milestones.
Right.
And
That's the one where that's incorrect, because I checked even just my own, and I had at least 8 families that should be, and it says 0 in December. So it's not, I don't think it's exactly correct. So it's okay.
yeah, I think there was some data that didn't get collected, and which is fine. We're going to reset for next round. And again, here on the measure results of the materials that were used. And then caregiver sees value in tracking. I guess I can't really see this.
Yeah.
Mallory, do you have any input on this?
Yes, so both on the first measurement and their most recent measurement, all of the parents reported seeing value in tracking the milestones.
Cool. And then it looks like there's the disruptor measures parent, caregivers, illiterate. I think there was one in September, and then it looks like through the rest. So it really wasn't a disruptor. So basically, parental milestone knowledge, the average number of correct items decreased slightly from the first measure to the last. And then I think there, like we said, there are some things that weren't, I think were kind of missed. So I don't know how accurate all of the those measures are.
Right.
And then process measures, materials given, parent caregivers were not consistently provided materials across the cycle. The most materials were provided in the last week of September, and then it tapered off. And then parents or caregivers reported engaging with the materials provided throughout. 100% of parents and caregivers reported seeing value in tracking the milestones, but initially at the time, both initially at the time of the last measurement. So, and then again, parents being illiterate didn't appear to be a disruptor. All right, Lena, do you want to take over?
So one of the things that I talked with some of my coworkers about was that the families really seem to enjoy using the app for the most part. And some have adopted using it consistently. Several families I spoke with last week are still using it on a consistent basis. So that's a positive about it. Some families just didn't have space on their phone to add the app. And so, but they were able to go to a website to look up the milestones and the checklists that are on the website, the CDC website. And then also we were providing the paper, like a pamphlet sort of things to them as well. The questions on the PDSA were confusing for some parents. We got that a lot, I think. And then some of the, just forgetting in general, I guess, because of so many other forms probably that we have to fill out. I guess sometimes it was on the back burner. And then we need to discuss the PDSA more often during team meetings because it really wasn't discussed. So.
I can jump in on this one.
Yes, thank you.
I think we'll probably look at adapting this PDSA, and we might, try to mirror it closer, make something a little bit more easier for people to be able to do and track as well. So not sure exactly what we'll adapt, but we'll have that discussion this afternoon.
Thank you, Sarah.
I think that's it, right?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you to both of you. I know that this has not been the easiest time trying to transition. So you briefly alluded to it, but for the rest of the group, Marisol is no longer with PCCT, PAT. And so Sarah has stepped in to kind of help that role for right now. She also is stepping into the role of helping because I can't remember Steve Hahn's exact title, but the person above Sarah and Marisol is also gone. So it was kind of a rapid turnover. So Sarah is wearing as many hats as she could probably manage.
Right. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah,
And
thank
still
you.
managed to pull it together, and she had the support of Lena, which is wonderful, and the rest of her providers to help put this together kind of last minute and be able to still present today, which we appreciate.
Yes.
One thing that Sarah and I have emailed about and talked about is some of the other programs. LCDA is a good example. They have PAT and Safe Care, and the past couple of PDSA rounds, they have combined and done this same or similar projects so that they can kind of track their outcomes and have the same questions. You're welcome to do that. You're welcome to also keep PAT and Safe Care doing different projects, but to the extent that it helps simplify things to overlap and kind of have a cohesive project across the two programs, since they're all under the PCCT umbrella, I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. I'm hoping, but we'll do that. We're gonna have, talk about it this afternoon, but I think that would be a great avenue for us and me probably.
Yes, and I do know Mallory and I went back and forth with the data. For some reason, it was hard tracking the data for your program this time. I know you have the two separate funding sources, but it wasn't even that. And so I think there was some confusion about how often things were being administered, how we were pulling the data. It just wasn't clean this time for whatever reason. So we will really make sure as we plan for this next round from the analytics side as well from the programmatic side to try and streamline it a little bit more so we can make sure that all the hard work that you're doing is reflected in the data.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we finish up, I know for OKCPS, I just wanted to check in. Yolanda had a last minute family emergency and was called out of the country. So I know that she's traveling, but I wasn't sure if she passed on the presentation for anyone else in the program to present or whether we need to hold off and maybe have that presentation happen in February. Anyone from OKCPS know what the expectation was for today?
Here's my video. She left so fast that there was hardly any time to do for her to do anything.
Okay,
So we don't have access to anything.
that is totally fine. I had a feeling that was the case. What we'll do is in February, when we have our monthly call, we'll have OKCPS give their presentation. Pre-Oaks will actually be doing the same thing because they had a last minute change in their schedule and support as well. So we have two programs that we'll need to present in February. All right, before we wrap up for the morning, any questions, comments, feedback about the presentations or anything that we've discussed in the morning session today? All right, what we're gonna do now, we're a little bit ahead of time, but that's fine. We'll just kind of move the agenda up a little bit. So potentially we'll finish up earlier this afternoon as well. We're gonna take the lunch break now. So we'll take a break from now until 12 o'clock. Sorry if that's kind of early for some of you to eat, but we'll do 11 to 12, and then we will rejoin at 12, and we will shift gears into starting to think through what we want to do for the next round of PDSA. Lisa and I will be available via email or phone or on this Zoom if you need anything, but otherwise we will all check in at 12 o'clock. Thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. It seems like most people have had a chance to rejoin after the lunch break. We're going to switch gears now and start talking about the next round of PDSAs and start making some plans. Before we go into breakout rooms, I just wanted to review some of the content that you might want to consider as you're planning for this next round. This is our key drivers diagram that we put together at the start of the Learning Collaborative on Developmental Monitoring and Promotion. As you can see on the left-hand side, the overall aim across the Learning Collaborative is to increase developmental monitoring and promotion. But there are several different ways that your program can try to hone in on that aim. So we have three different primary drivers. The first is to improve developmental and behavioral screening. The second is to increase workforce training on child development. And the third is to increase family involvement in child development. And as you move from left to right, you start to see increasing specificity in terms of how we're going to create those changes. And on the right-hand side, you can see change idea examples. These truly are just examples. And I want you to feel free to utilize anything that you think is going to be helpful, whatever change idea you want to come up with. It doesn't have to be one of these that are listed here. I will also say the last round of PDSA, most programs focused on increasing family involvement in child development, which is wonderful. And we saw a lot of great success with that. I have heard some feedback from programs. Some of them are feeling a little burdened. As of right now, the providers have a lot on their plates. They're dealing with a lot of change and turnover. If you're trying to find a project that's maybe a little bit less data collection heavy and relies a little bit more on data already being collected in ETO, you could think about some of the other primary drivers, for example, improving developmental and behavioral screening. All programs are already completing behavioral and developmental screenings, so you can take advantage of the ASQ and other screeners that are already being reported to ETO and think through how you can refine that process, maybe informing families of children's screening or how to create a more standardized, reliable process. What happens after a referral is made or potential concern is identified, for example. Those are just some ways that you could think about trying to focus on a different primary driver than family involvement in child development. However, if you would like to continue focusing on that, I think there's a lot of room for innovation and changes that we can still make. In terms of helpful materials, we spent a lot of time going through the CDC's Learn the Signs Act Early program at the beginning of our Learning Collaborative on developmental monitoring and promotion. I'd actually like to point out the other program that we've highlighted here, which is Talking is Teaching. This is focused primarily on early language acquisition. So it helps parents come up with daily activities or routines. The idea is trying to get parents to talk and engage more with their children to help improve vocabulary and brain development for kids. I'm actually going to stop sharing for a second because I'm going to pull up that material just because I think it would be helpful to see some of the resources. So let me pull this up instead. This is the Talking is Teaching website. You can see up here, it's just talkingisteaching.org. If you go to the resources page and you scroll down, they have a lot of different resources here. You can filter by age, by topic, and they have different worksheets or kind of infographics to help families. This is one example. Diaper time is talk time. It's trying to help parents see how they can embed talking and learning into daily routines. So if you're already going to be changing your child's diaper, there are things you can do to make it a more kind of educational, instructional time. You can describe what you're seeing, you can sing, you can make up a song, find a pattern. So it gives suggestions. And then down here, it has some songs, some of which are focused more on linguistics, others are focused more on math. So this is just one example of the materials that they have. They also, in addition to handouts, they have a bunch of other ones. You know, this infographic is about talking, reading, and singing together every day, and it has suggestions for how you can do so. They also have videos, so ways of getting parents to engage more and, again, focus on either early math or early literacy. So these are videos you could potentially show families or handouts that you might want to share with them. And as you can see at the top, the website is also translated into Spanish. I will say we looked at the content in the last learning session, and it looks like not everything has been translated to Spanish. So it's not the case that every resource you see here is available in Spanish on their website. Some of them you might have to translate on your own if you wanted to utilize them. I just wanted to put that resource, and I will actually copy that link and put it in the chat. So for programs that maybe want to look at this program this time and incorporate some of those materials, if you kind of utilize the CDC materials and you want additional resources to give your families, you could think about incorporating those as well. Okay. Again, when thinking about data monitoring, there are a number of different ways that we can pull data out of ETO. We can track referrals. We can track developmental screenings, referral follow-ups, and trainings that are given to the providers. We also have the LTSAE materials that are being collected at the learning collaborative level, and you can also collect those on a more numerous occasion if you would like for your own program. And then there's the positive parenting practices handout that a lot of programs used this last time. This is the LTSAE monitoring measure. We talked about it this morning when we were showing that between the home visiting and the WIC moms, we're not seeing a difference in monitoring child development. So this is understanding those developmental milestones. It is 32 questions in length, which I realize is probably a heavy burden for providers to ask that many questions to families. Some programs have elected to shorten down the list. And so what they've done is they've identified maybe 10 key milestones out of this list that they want to make sure parents know. And they just ask those questions of parents. So you don't have to use the full 32. You could use a reduced list if that would be helpful for you. Here's the positive parenting practices handout. A lot of different programs have used this. I will say CAP Tulsa has translated this handout. They have it in Spanish and in Zomi. So if other programs would like to use this handout in one of those two languages, it is available, and CAP Tulsa is happy to share their materials. Other programs have thought about ways of kind of reducing this list. So maybe focusing on 1 or 2 or 3 of these positive parenting practices and kind of specializing on those during the PDSA while others are focused on all 6. Potential disruptors. One of the kind of unifying themes I think I heard across a lot of the presentations was that even though you might have thought of what could have been an exhaustive list of disruptors, there were quite a few that popped up that you weren't expecting, or the ones that you did measure turned out not to be disruptors. So trying to think through other things that might be coming into play might be impacting success with the PDSA. So I think a lot of the programs focus on, well, perhaps providers don't distribute the materials, or parents don't read them or use them, parents are too busy. But there might be other factors coming into play that we want to think about. When we go into breakout rooms, we'd like you to start with selecting a change idea. What is the thing you would like to change, and how do you want to make that change? And we recommend working as a team to determine what change idea works best for you. So looking at that key drivers diagram and identifying a primary driver, a secondary driver, a change idea. You can use what's in the key drivers diagram, or like I said, you're welcome to come up with your own, and then discuss ways that you want to kind of tailor that change idea, make sure it's a good fit for your program, and can be tested in a relatively short period of time. And our goal by the end of today is to have most of that PDSA template that we have most of that filled out. You may also have a chance to finish, or at least start working on your change theory diagram so that you can present that before we wrap up today. During the breakout sessions and even afterwards, we will be around to help. So during the breakout sessions, your analysts should be in the room with you, or at least floating back and forth if they have multiple programs today. Dr. Bard and I will be available, and will be floating around some of the rooms. So you do have that support. And then afterwards, if you have additional questions or need support, we can help you before the next round, the next call in February. We've changed our analyst assignments just a little bit now that C1 is back. Lisa Deshay is officially taking over as analyst for the C1 program. She's going to be supported by Stephen Pan, one of the graduate students that we have on our team right now. And then we also, Rachel Wilson will be helping out with both PCCT programs now that they are kind of under one umbrella and working together. We'd like to have Rachel supporting both of those programs. Andrew is still working with the same 3 programs he had last round. Adden is also with his same programs. And Yachi is going to be supporting Frontline and Creox again, but also Bethany Public School. And she will have Justin Durham, who's a graduate student, to also help her in that role. Okay. As we start to think about what to do for these PDSAs and what we want to focus on, just a couple of reminders to be thinking about. One is we'd like to focus on measurements and outcomes that are numerous. So if you think about it, if you can focus on something that has a lot of counts, for example, visits versus clients. If you're focused on clients and you only have maybe 20 to 30 clients at your agency, it's harder to see change. If you focus on visits for those clients, if each client has 10 to 15 visits over the course of the 5 months, then that's a much higher count. So you have a greater chance of seeing change and variability, and knowing that any change you do see, you feel a little bit more comfortable that it's a real change. We want it to be something fast that doesn't require much extra effort to collect and record. So like we talked about, some of these questionnaires are a little long. If you want to shorten them, or you want to focus on something that's already in ETO, it's already being collected, that is going to reduce the burden on the part of the providers. We want it to be fresh. So thinking about quick latency, which better reflects the current state of your program. So maybe canceled visits, that's something that's happening and is fresh kind of this month. You could look at how many canceled visits versus 3-month retention, where you're looking over a longer period of time, where there might be more things kind of changing about your program that is not accounted for in that measurement. And finally, frequent, multiple measurements spread out. So a 2-minute weekly chat is more efficient than a prolonged exit interview. So asking a mom one time, give this really in-depth narrative about what's going on in her life, versus every week checking in and getting a little bit of information is helpful. This is the change theory diagram. If for any reason one of the programs needs this blank version, please contact Lisa and Tunley, and she can send that to you, but most of you should have it and have been using it in the past. PDSA specific measures. I think we're all becoming pretty solid with these, but I just want to review it because sometimes still, I think everybody knows the disruptor, that one's clear, but sometimes there's still a little confusion around process and outcome. Just a reminder that the process is the thing you're doing to create the change. So are you handing out welcome letters? Are you handing out materials? Are you distributing books to families? That's the thing you're doing. That's the process. The outcome is what you're trying to change. So you're trying to improve parents' knowledge, or you're trying to get families to do more activities with their kids. That's the outcome that you're hoping changes over time. Here's a timeline of the next few months. Over the next week or so, we hope that you finish your PDSA template and your change theory diagrams, and that you send them to us so we can start incorporating changes into ETO. So what we'll do is what we've done in the past, which is as you identify your process, your outcome, and your disruptor measures, we will work with you to determine what's already being collected in ETO and what needs to be added. So a reminder, you have 2 touch points associated with this Learning Collaborative and PDSA. There's the Learning Collaborative wide touch point. It's called, I think, Child Development Learning Collaborative touch point. That is that 15 question measure that I showed previously that asks how often parents are doing certain behaviors. That is still something we'd like you to collect. It's being done every 3 months for each family. And ETO is set to have alerts. So as a family comes due for that next assessment, ETO should alert you that you should complete it. For C1 programs, it has now been, that touch point has been activated. So C1 programs should now be able to enter data into that touch point as well. In addition to the Learning Collaborative touch point, though, we also have the Child Development PDSA touch point. That is specific for each program. That's what will probably change after you come up with your new PDSA plan. So as you finish up and you come up with what you want to do for the next 5 or 6 months, we'll look through to see if your PDSA touch point needs to be updated. Are there questions that are no longer relevant that we need to remove? Are there new questions that we need to add? So that'll all be done over the next couple of weeks. We'd like to get that done as early in February as possible so that you can start data collection. That being said, for the learning collaborative touch point, that 15-item measure, that you can collect at any point. So for C1 program, since you've never collected that, you could start collecting that before your PDSA touch point is ready. For other programs, you can continue collecting it as it comes due for families, or if you have any new families that become enrolled, you can start collecting that data right away. For the PDSA touch points, once those are available in ETO, we'll let you know that it's ready and live. And then your analyst will create a new data dashboard to send to you each week. We'll have our monthly learning collaborative meetings. These are the meetings that we've been having once a month. They're specifically for the supervisors of the program. So typically our evaluation team attends, our analysts attend, and then the supervisors from each program attend. And that's once a month. And then every other month, we'll do smaller rounding calls. So again, reminder for everyone, those are the calls in which I and your analyst meet with just your program to talk about how things are going. And usually it's just me, an analyst, and whatever, and the supervisor for that program. And we meet every other month to just check in and see how things are going. And then we will have our third and final learning session on developmental monitoring and promotion around July. Any questions about that timeline or these activities that are going to happen over the next few months? Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the breakout rooms. Lisa Tunley is going to assign the rooms. The way it works is the rooms will open up, and let me stop sharing, make it easier. The rooms will open up. You should be able to assign yourself into your program's room. If you have an older version of Zoom, that sometimes does not work. And then you can stay in the main room and Lisa can assign you individually to the room that you need to go to. We'll have about an hour and a half in those rooms to start planning. And again, we're hoping by the end you have at least your PDSA template started or finished, that change theory diagram, but you'll have an hour and a half to work on that. And like I said, your analyst should also be in the room part or all of the time. And David and I will also be floating around the various rooms. Any questions before we open up the break rooms? Okay. Lisa, are you able to open those up so they can start assigning?
Yep.
Perfect. All right.
Just let me know if I need to put you in a room. Oh, Dr. Milojevic,
Yeah.
these are going to be for an hour, right? Or hour and a half?
Hour and a half.
Okay. I have an old setting on here. I may have to close the rooms and then change that old setting.
Okay.
Oh, sorry,
It's
everybody.
okay. We had the same problem last time where I just didn't even assign C1 to a room, so they had to stay in the main room the whole time.
Oh, no. I
So
didn't.
it worked, but I completely forgot.
It's so annoying.
I know.
I wonder if I can broadcast a message really quick. Nope, it won't let me. So too bad. You already tried to close the rooms. You don't get to broadcast messages too.
All right, so everybody should be coming back in about 20 seconds and then you'll redistribute.
Yes, I have to change the setting. I looked up there and it was counting down from 25 minutes. And okay, you said an hour and a half. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Hour and a half.
My stomach's kind of hurting today. I don't know what's going on, so I'm like a little out of it.
It's okay. I think we're all out of it at this point.
Okay, let me options. Sorry, everybody. I have to change the. Just kidding, guys.
We will put you back in the rooms. The timing was set incorrectly, so it was gonna kick you out after 25 minutes, which is not enough time. So we're gonna try again. It wouldn't be a Zoom meeting without technical difficulties. All right, so now you're set. Everybody can jump into their rooms.
Anybody needs to be put in a room? I see a bunch of people in here, but
Yeah, I haven't been
okay. And what
still.
program are you with, Brianna?
Parent Promise.
Okay.
I got Samantha too for the chat.
Let's see.
My name is Curry Gamble. I'm with the Parent Child Center of Tulsa. I need to be placed in a room as well.
All right. See, I think everybody's leaving now.
I need to be placed in a room. I'm with PAT Hugs.
All right. Oh, I see that. I wasn't watching the chat.
That's all right, I got him. Looks like mostly Parent Promise. Okay, I think we're now just to 3 who are unassigned. Some of these may just.
Okay. Yeah, I have them on the roll call. So where is Meg? I'm looking at my Meg. Some people are sometimes away, so.
Okay, I'm gonna jump around now.
She's with Frontline. Okay, everybody's done.
Lisa, are you there?
Yeah, did you need to be put back in a room? Did you ever get to go?
I think I was in the wrong room. I didn't recognize anybody.
Oh no. Okay, let's see.
I'll be with Sarah Frankie. I don't know where she went.
Oh, that's Creoaks.
Yes.
Okay, let's put you in there.
Thanks.
I have to find you. Where are you? Wait, maybe you're still in the other room that you were not supposed to be in.
I could totally go back. Apparently they're done, so I'm cool with that.
Oh, so they're ahead of the game.
Yeah, I didn't even know how they knew what to do it over.
I don't see. Where did I send you? Let me see.
You sent me to.
Okay. So you
I
gotta.
don't know.
There's so many PAT programs, so I'm like, which PAT? And so I just sometimes guess. Hey, Stephen, did you want to go to a room or?
Yeah, hey, sorry, I just got my audio. Yeah, I'm trying to see which room Andrew is in.
Let's see, he is. Where's Andrew? I'm glad it puts it in ABC order because that makes it easier. He's in Parent Promise. Is that where you want to go?
Yeah, sounds good. Let me just hit join, see if I can.
Hey, Rachel.
Hi there.
What happened?
You tell me.
I didn't know you were on Safe Care and PAT. Is this new?
As you said in the newest email. Yeah, I've been assigned to them for the next cycle.
Oh, I think she said that, but I wasn't at the first learning session. I was in class. So where do you want to go? I think PAT is here, so let's see.
Yeah, put me with them so that I can help them. At this point, we're preparing the PDSA for the next cycle.
Yeah, they just went in the room, so it's like maybe 5 minutes in.
Okay.
All right. Bitch, I haven't paid my dues, my nigga.
now. I hope everybody is back. What we're going to do to finish up the day is have each program give a brief presentation about their PDSA plan for this round. If you've had a chance to fill out your PDSA template, you can share that. If you've had a chance to complete your change theory diagram, you can share that as well. And if you're still in the planning phases, you can just talk through what you're thinking of and what you might want to focus on for this next round. All right, we are going to, let me go back to my notes. We're going to start with Frontline. Amy, will you be presenting for Frontline?
Yes, I will. Me again. Let me share with you our PDSA. All right, so we are going to piggyback off of our cycle 1 when we realized parents were not taking the initiative. We're going to start all the way back with increasing parent educator knowledge of child development so that we can empower our parents to take on this role. So we're going to title it Increasing Parent Educator Knowledge of Child Development. Our primary driver, increased workforce training on child development, begin in February and July. Our change is to increase home visitor knowledge on child development. Our goal, our SMART aim, is to hopefully increase our competency by 10% or more. Yachi suggested measuring weekly outcomes by how many PEs are completing which training during this cycle. Process measures, parent educators will complete 4 modules of child development training from the CDC's Watch Me, Celebrating Milestones and Sharing Concerns. PEs will complete 1 module per month beginning in February. PEs will complete a pre-test and post-test for each module, and scores will be recorded respectively. Potential disruptors would be unexpected illness, family or maternity leave, change in employment status, or just failure to complete the module by the parent educator. Predictions, we predict that we will increase our knowledge by at least 10%. We're going to use the CDC training online module for our training tool. Our staff will implement this change. Parent educators are our target. We want to increase child development knowledge. It's a virtual delivery method beginning in February, ending in July of 2022. We want to give each PE a fact sheet. We found 2 from the CDC training that were entitled, "You're a Trusted Partner and Valuable Resource to Parents, and Your Role Is," under the home visiting section of this training. So PEs will complete 1 module per month, submit the pre and post test for each module, and they will be scored respectively. Hopefully we see an increase at the end of each module. Once we are familiar and better trained with more knowledge on these areas, we hope to share it with our families. Any suggestions or questions or thoughts?
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Amy, and I appreciate your willingness to go first and kind of jump in. I'm excited. I think there are a few programs that'll be presenting from what I heard in the breakout rooms who are going to be focused on workforce development. So it seemed like that was a popular topic this time around. So you'll have a couple other groups that are going to be also looking at some of those outcomes. So we'll be able to see kind of across a couple of programs how that's going. So that's great. All right, thank you, Amy. Now we will turn to North Care, Safe Care. So Dwan or Jade?
Yes, I will go ahead and get that pulled up in just a second. Okay. Alrighty, so we are in a sense going to continue with our first project. We are going to look at increasing family involvement and child development still, and then utilize a different material to teach parents about developmental milestones this time. to get parents more involved with developmental tracking. So our SMART aim is going to be by July 2022, parents will increase their knowledge of child development by 10% by comparing a pre and a post test. So we are going to utilize a subset of questions from a questionnaire that looks at, at what age would you be concerned if your child wasn't making noises? And so we're going to administer that through a pre and a post test to get that information. And then on an average pre and post test on a monthly basis, kind of run those reports to get an overall picture. And so the process measure is going to be, did the provider give the family a book and assist with downloading the app? Disruptors that we talked about were obstacles for utilizing that just in general. So like maybe the parent's work schedule. And then we were able to brainstorm a few other ones that you'll see here. So maybe that they forgot, we've had technology issues in the past with the app and some other things. So our prediction is that parental involvement will increase in their knowledge of their child and developmental milestones. And then we will definitely be needing to update our database in order to track those. So we'll be doing that. And then our PDSA. So the plan, staff is going to be implementing this change and we'll be targeting consumers that have children up to 4. So the books that we're going to be using and implementing with families go up to that age. So that's what we'll be using. Providers will give and read an amazing book with consumers. Providers will also have consumers utilize the milestone tracking app to have continued monitoring of their child's development. And that will take place in the home from March 1st of 2022 to July of 2022. And so that is as far as we have gotten with that. But yeah. So we are looking forward to using the book, and I think that will add something different. We were discussing that the parents will really like to be able to present it with like a little gift, kind of something that they can keep rather than just having like a handout and stuff. So we're looking forward to that.
And do you have all the books that you need for it?
Yes, so I think, last time we were doing this, that was kind of one of the barriers that we had ran into at that time, not having all the books, but I believe we do have all of the books now, so we'll be good to go.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Jade.
Thanks.
Okay, next is Parent Promise. I don't know if Sean is presenting or if one of the supervisors.
Hi, so I'll be presenting for Parent Promise.
Great.
And I'm just going to kind of talk through it a little bit. So what we decided was our change that was selected is to individualize services for families according to their feedback. So what we're going to be doing is implementing routines with families. So our why was to our SMART aim was that we would like to see at least 50% of families show an improvement in any routines that they've chosen. So we'll kind of give them some options on something to work on as far as the routines. And then, of course, we'll be asking them on a weekly basis about following up on the routines, basically, if they've chosen a routine and how that's going. The process measure would be if the PE talked to the parent about the routines, what type of routines are the families focused on at that time. Our disruptors, we came up with things as caregiver not willing, an unexpected illness, maybe some lack of support, mental health, cognitive overload, and lack of time. Our predictions were that we expected half of families will improve in implementing the routine of their choice. Task and tools will, the PEs will come up with routine charts to help assist the families, books, the PAT handouts about routines, and of course, the list that we'll come up with some basic routines that families can work on. The who would be, of course, the PEs. The families are our targets. And then, like I said, they'll be providing a list. We'll do a survey about routines and providing them supportive information from the PAT curriculum. And of course, those will be done during the visit. So whether we're going into the home or virtually, just kind of talking with families about that. And the WIN will be February through July. That's about as far as we've gotten so far.
Okay, that's great. And this is for all the programs. I know that everyone's at various stages of completing the PDSA templates and the change 3 diagrams. If you do need any support while you're trying to finish those up, you can contact me, you can contact your analyst. And then when you do feel like you've got it in a good place and you're ready to send it to us, please do. And then we'll kind of go through it with you and get everything up to date on ETO. All right, how about next? Let's see, PCCT, PAT.
I have just a few minutes, then I have to pop off. Let me share my screen. We are keeping it, and this is not completely updated, but we're going to be doing the same as Safe Care in PAT. So basically our SMART aim is that we see an increase in positive parenting practices. We'll be at the baseline. We'll be doing a child development PDSA that asks those positive parenting questions. And at the end of the cycle in end of June. And our PEs will be working with the caregivers to identify a positive parenting practice and modeling that behavior and talking about demonstrating how to implement those behaviors with the children, their child. We'll still be providing the CDC Developmental Milestones app or material if they needed it. Providing them with, I think someone else calls it the PPP, but also providing them with a PPP form and working with the caregiver to figure out what positive parenting practices they want to utilize for the month. Identify activities family want to engage in, and then the provider models that behavior or activity. Some disruptors we've talked about were parent canceling the visit, misplacing the PPP form, or the parent educator or provider forgets that form, or the visit was not completed as planned, like possibly a crisis occurred, so the provider couldn't do their normal visit, so they didn't have the opportunity to do their lesson plan or their or provide the PPP information. And that's pretty much what we've gotten down so far. I need to go in on the second page and update it, but that's generally what we're doing.
That sounds great. And how much does that overlap with what Safe Care decided to do?
For the most part, it's going to be pretty similar. I think though there is going to be one difference. Well, there is a lot of stuff that we'll have to add for PAT. They don't have the same PDSA that we have in ETO, that Safe Care has in ETO, so we'll add that and adapt some of just a little bit. So I think most of it's going to be all the same.
Okay, perfect. Well, that should be helpful. That sounds great, and I appreciate you hanging on. I know you have to jump off now, but thanks for hanging on until you could finish your presentation.
Yes, thank you. Hopefully that was somewhat clear.
No, okay, no worries. All right, thank you. How about OKCPS? I know Yolanda's not here, but does someone want to talk through what you're planning to do?
I will.
All right, thanks, Emily.
Let's see. I was trying to, oh, there it is. Okay. So a lot of what we did previous, we're going to keep it. We're going to use milestones to improve child development knowledge to the parents. We're going to identify children at risk and improve parents' knowledge and promote family engagement. Let's see, we're going to do reading and playtime activities. We're going to increase frequency of positive parenting practices by 10% is our goal. We're going to use ASQs as our our monitoring. And we're going to see if there are new, emerging, or achieved milestones. We're going to do positive parent practice questionnaires will be used to assess the family engagement, and the following questions we'll ask if they reach their child, if they limit TV or screen time, if they go outside, if they schedule play dates for their child, and if they have family meals together. We actually took a couple of those out. We took going outside to play with your child, and I think we took out family meal times because of the weather and our families. Our distributing things to the parents, our handouts are the PAT handouts and the LTSEA materials. Let's see, our disruptors would be parents don't have the materials for the activities, they don't have books, they cancel home visits, and environmental stressors. Parents will have a more engaged, more knowledge about child development and signs of potential developmental delays. Our tools and tasks will use the ASQ. We'll provide monthly activities and materials to the families. We'll record the information in ETO. Let's see. We'll provide books and materials. Our visits will be done either in person or on virtual. Who will be implementing the change? Parent educators and our supervisor. And we'll target families who scored at risk for development. Parent educators will provide monthly playtime activities and books for families. I said that already. Our win is February 1st through July 31st. Let's see. I think that's it. The other stuff is redundant. Like I've already answered it. So that's our plan. Some of the stuff we didn't answer because we want Yolanda's input, and so we'll wait till she gets back.
That sounds great. So it sounds like you'll be focusing again on those kids identified as at risk. Is that staying the same as before?
Yes.
Okay. And are the red parts that I'm seeing here, are those things that you've changed or added this time around?
We changed, and Ketsia was nice enough to type this up for us. And so she left it in red because we need to change it in ETO.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Emily, for presenting.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Emily.
All right. How about OKC C1? Not sure who's going to be presenting from C1.
I thought Sarah Young was, but she may have stepped away.
No, I'm here. Sorry. I just I thought Julie was, so it's okay.
Oh, you're waiting for Sarah Richardson too, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Okay.
I had no idea that we chose somebody to present.
Do you want to do it, Julie?
No, I'm not prepared. I didn't write all that stuff down, and I don't have the sheet that.
Okay, no, I'll go ahead and do it.
At
I'll go
least,
ahead and do it. Yeah, let me pull this up really fast. So let me see if I can share my screen here. Hopefully this will show up. Okay, so we are kind of similar to some other groups that we're going to kind of focus a little bit more on our own team's knowledge development and that kind of stuff. So main idea is just kind of increasing the knowledge of developmental milestones and comfort with educating parents about them. So our primary driver is going to be increasing workforce training on child development. A lot of this, the reason why we chose this is just we have a lot of new nurses that have started with us. And so we just want to have the ability to kind of address, you know, that new knowledge since we've got so many new nurses with us. So other thing, our SMART aim is going to be increasing knowledge and comfort with developmental milestones education by an average of 10%. Certainly we have some nurses that have been here a little bit longer and some that are newer. So it's going to vary, you know, how much of a change there is in their comfort and knowledge. But on average, we're going to go with 10%. Let's see. So kind of some of our plans for measuring the outcome is going to be a pre and post survey. Just kind of looking at, you know, comfort measures and also knowledge. And then, so we'll do that, you know, the pre-survey, obviously, when we start this process, and then the post at the end, just to see how we've done. Another thing that we're going to do as well is probably have somewhere for us to document. We have a handout that we can use with parents that is a monthly handout that is called What's New, What's Next. And that kind of goes over developmental information. And so we're going to use that kind of as a way to assess if nurses are, you know, giving that information, how comfortable do they feel with it? And so we'll have some questions available for nurses to answer that kind of help us figure out if we are giving that information and how comfortable we feel with it. So disruptors, certainly canceled visits, staff turnover, you know, if we have any nurses that are, you know, leaving or new nurses, I think we have at this point maybe one position that's open. So that might have a little bit of an effect. If nurses aren't available for trainings and things like that, you know, that might affect the knowledge that they're receiving just because, you know, they're not there for that training. Another one that we talked about, but I'm not sure if we'll end up measuring, is just based on, you know, which I guess this kind of goes back to, you know, a process measure of, you know, were we able to give them the handout? And if we weren't, was it because there was some crisis when we showed up, or, you know, we had to talk about other things, or, you know, stuff like that. So predictions is just that, you know, our staff's comfort will increase with providing this information to parents, and just that, you know, we might more readily be providing developmental information with parents if we're feeling more comfortable and having a larger knowledge about what to expect developmental wise for the kids that we're seeing. And that's pretty much, I think, as far as we got. So we'll keep working on the rest.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate you presenting and jumping in. I know it's first time back for a C1 program. I think that's a great choice for starting you off, to focus on workforce development and get everybody comfortable, and then maybe in the next round dive into working with the families more. But I think that's a great place to start for your program. So I'm excited to see how that goes. I think we have one final program for today, which is Creox.
Yes. Hi, let me get this up. Okay, so we did increased number of completed goals. With our program being a little bit of a transition stage, we're not going to be having any more PEs come on, and we're not enrolling any families. So we kind of went with something that we felt like we could overall kind of get growth from, regardless if it's on the federal or the state contract. And that was something that we did see was just increasing those completed visits, working more with staff on how to help families complete goals. So to utilize SMART goal setting with families to increase number of completed goals. We set a lot of goals, but we don't have as many completed goals as I'd like to see. And I think it's because some of them are a little bit too big, and we just need to kind of get them a little bit downsized. So increase goal completion. I'm going to go ahead and put together a fact sheet. We'll probably get it out by the 15th. And, you know, we will only have until the end of March to be collecting data on this for us. So we'll engage and educate parents to help increase completion of goals that we help them set to increase self-sufficiency. That's kind of our idea. We know that's not directly related to child development, but it kind of is if parents can learn how to be more self-sufficient and set their own goals and their own child goals. SMART aim, again, this was kind of, we had a little bit of a tricky time coming up with what exactly to say and to track on this, but after delivering the fact sheet, increased number of completed goals each family by 5%. That might be a lot in like a month, but why not set the bar high? Numerator, number of families working through the steps of achieving goals, and denominator would be the number of parents enrolled in the program, which that shouldn't change since we're not going to be enrolling right now. Tracking goals. So one, we'll create and then share the fact sheet with the families to show how completion of goals does increase self-sufficiency. Just getting them to understand that. Distribute educational handouts, emphasizing the importance of prenatal involvement with taking each step that is set. So again, just breaking it down, setting one goal, but then breaking it down into small steps for them to kind of work through. Encourage parent to complete goal while supporting them through each step. Disruptors, we had parents not seeing the value in goal setting, lack of time, lack of patience in completing a step, literacy issues, culture, and crisis, lack of resources. Parents will become, we are hoping that parents will become more engaged in setting their own goals, therefore becoming more self-sufficient, and that will exceed the 5%. So tools, and we'll use, we've got kind of a policy on the SMART goals. So we talked about just kind of going back over that and kind of making sure all the parent educators, you know, if we have some new ones, just kind of understand how to set those goals. We'll have a fact sheet, we'll have ETO touch points to track materials and distribute the tracking that each parent educator does on the touch point, and we'll do that week to week. So who will implement? That'll be me and Holly, Jordan, Megan, and Morgan. Morgan is our parent educator in Muskogee. So she'll definitely be on the contract till the end of March. So even next month and into March, she might be leading some of these PDSA calls and things like that. So she's on today. And so who's targeted parents who are currently enrolled in the program during the cycle? What increased family involvement and knowledge in SMART goal setting? Where parents will be engaging throughout the cycle period in each visit. PE will track on ETO the activity involvement by parents during visits in home and virtually. When collect data from ETO over the next 2 months. Program manager, not CC, will format the educational handout on the importance of the role of parents setting goals. PEs will disperse the materials to families, educate parents on goal setting process, log findings of participation on ETO. PM and PEs will continue to check program tracking and collaborate with analytical team. And I think that's it. And then we had this kind of put together. And again, just kind of going back over engaging and educating parents and setting SMART goals. And so I kind of just added specific, measurable, achievable. Create, share fact sheet with families. PEs show parents how to set steps for completing an identified goal, and then PE help and model how to complete each step to achieve this goal. And then we kind of went into the different levels of families. Like at first, this is something that Susie, way back when, has always kind of taught us, just kind of in those levels of families, like doing for them a lot at first to kind of teach them how to set those goals and make those steps. But then we're kind of on that next level of families that have been in the program a little bit longer. We're kind of doing it with them, guiding them as they're going through the process. And then we get into kind of a praise phase of them kind of doing it on their own. And then disruptors, kind of have all the same ones that we had last time: culture, literacy, low self-esteem, COVID and turnover, parents unwilling or unable to participate, and parents getting overwhelmed and not completing a step in the process and abandoning the goal. So that was it.
Thank you, Sarah. And I know this has been a challenging time for Cree Oaks, trying to figure out what the plan is going forward, and things might be up in the air and change as you learn more. So if you need any support or you need to make changes to your plan over the next couple of months while you're sorting out, what's going on with the contract, CQI, all of that, just let us know and check in, and we'll just figure out what makes sense to do.
Okay, that's great. That's why I wanted to just kind of do an easy topic for us to track and to be able to just kind of have some developmental growth in this area for the teams. I think it'll be beneficial for us and the families, regardless of the work that we kind of put towards this. So anyway, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I know since you won't have a lot of time to capture data, if you have what you need in ETO and you want to work with Yachi to get that up onto ETO earlier, then sometimes it takes us a week or two to get everything up and running. But I think we can, since yours is separate and isn't related to the Child Development PDSA as of right now, we can work to get that up faster and just kind of make that happen. So let us know what we can do.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, that is all the programs for today. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to go back and go through a couple of items. Just a reminder again, so now that all of your programs have gone through the PDSA planning phase, spent the last hour and a half coming up with a general plan of what you want to do. Our goal is to have you finalize that PDSA template and finalize the change theory diagrams, hopefully in the next week or so. Once those are done, if you can email them to me, to Lisa Tunley, and to your analysts, so that we can, one, have those for our records, but also we'll start putting together a list. What happens is your analyst will come up with a list of everything they think needs to be changed in ETO. And then we'll go back and forth with you, make sure what we're asking to change in ETO works for you and makes sense. Once that's done, we will send a list of all the changes for every single program to Anira at OSDH. She'll make the changes in ETO, and then she'll let us know when everything is up to date and ready for data collection. We would like to get that going within the first 2 weeks of February so that you have the time to collect the data that you need. Like I mentioned before, the Learning Collaborative Touchpoint is separate from this, and it is already live and ready to go. So if you want to collect data from new families, or some of your families are due for a new assessment, you can already be doing that. You don't need to wait for any information from us. It's just for that PDSA touchpoint that's specific to your program's questions. That's the one that we're going to work on updating over the next two weeks or so. Any questions about timeline or expectations?
Does everyone have the blank version of the change theory diagram? If you don't have it, then I would suggest dropping an email to Lisa Tunley and she can get that to you. Does that sound okay, Helen?
That's absolutely fine. Also, what Lisa, I think she did already send out while we were in our breakout room, she sent out this PowerPoint from today. It also has at least the structure of the change theory diagram, but she can send you a blank PDSA template if you need it, a blank change theory diagram if you need it. She will also be distributing today's recording. So if you had members of your program that were not available, she'll let you know when you can go and look at that. They get uploaded to the CQI YouTube channel. So she'll let you know when all that is up and running. Let's see, I think we got through all the content. I don't know, David, are you still on? Is there anything you want to touch on before we wrap up for today?
Just to say thank you for the work you put in, for the work that's ahead, and excited to see where these new projects lead us.
All right, well, we'll be wrapping up a little bit early today. I don't think anyone's going to complain. Thank you so much for sticking with us for today. We know it can be a long day, but we're really excited about your projects, and we will check in next month in February. We'll have a learning collaborative call with the supervisors and analysts, and we will be working with you via email over the next couple of weeks, make sure everything's up to date and you can start collecting data and working on your project. So thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.